Hello, this is Timmy Vilgiate, and I'm going to be playing the part of John. But because of the subject matter of this entire radio show, I just wanted to start with an incredibly lame disclaimer. Just to be clear, this show is not meant to promote the illicit use of LSD, or really the abuse of any substance. LSD will not give you superpowers, even if you take it underneath a hole in the universe. Not that I've tried. Clinical benefits from psychedelics are generally seen under the supervision of trained psychologists and psychiatrists, and using them irresponsibly or irreverently can be extremely dangerous given their current illegal natures. Events portrayed in this series are strictly fictional, and any resemblance to actual events is coincidental. With all that said, here's the first episode of Rivers of the Mind, entitled Blue Topaz. The blue topaz crystal represented eternity. It had a pure soul, everlasting and serene. I found it in a creek bed in a little town in the Texas Hill Country. I knew it was the state's stone. I had hitchhiked there from Alabama, and there I was looking for blue quartz and agate. Lots of blues nowadays. The people I met often seemed like they were in the need of solace and relief. And agates were for people in need of protection. Another popular gem. I found the blue topaz crystal that I held in my hands. I already said that. I'm sorry. I strung it out onto a hemp cord, and I kept it in a box with the others. That was 3 days ago. It was the crystal that I dug out of my things this morning when I needed comfort. The acid from the day before was still lingering, and I felt uneasy. I checked the clock. 34 hours and 9 minutes. It had been a beautiful trip. Just beautiful, but I was ready for it to stop. The place that someone goes with acid isn't a place that they should stay. I'd taken a lot. More than I'd expected to take. For the first hour or so, I just stared up at the sky. I was next to a place where the guy that gave me the acid had told me the government found a UFO at a big compound, secret facility thing. I was hoping to see something, but I quickly forgot about it. And instead, I just laid on the grass and stared up at the stars. Time seemed to melt away, and I let my mind drift as it slowly broke ties with my body and collapsed into the heavens until I was surrounded in color. Moments from the last few years drifted over me. The lingering doubt that I was not where I was supposed to be had melted away. I forgot the feeling that at my age, with my education, I should have been somewhere in North Dakota working on an oil field, living with a wife and kids, in a house, in a car, not homeless, wandering the country looking for crystals and making necklaces. A doubt always in the back of my mind that I'd forgotten completely. When the acid peaked, it must have been about midnight, but I was too far gone to return to my body and to look at the watch. No, I was somewhere else. Somewhere indescribable. And I started to feel myself fall. A great and titanic gravity began pulling me in, and I felt myself just imperceptibly slide into what I could only explain as a crack in the universe. Thick and glowing blue energy pulsed around me. I was surrounded by a chattering world of panicked voices and sirens. I thought for a moment that I was in the hospital. But I decided to relax and to let whatever was just be. And to not get bogged down in what might be happening. Whatever was. And that was that. I waited for a moment into the energy. I wondered what I was watching. Was it hell? I saw souls being sucked down into some kind of indescribable deep, leaving their bodies as I sat still, entirely unmoving. I felt an energy wash over me, pulling me under like a great wave at high tide and spilling over my body. It surrounded me with the sounds of peace. And if I were dead, I realized I was comfortable with it. I was comfortable, and then I could accept whatever came my way. Feeling like cold water pouring down from my brain and over my bones overcame my body. The sensation still lingered there as I woke up. I woke up at 5 in the morning. Everything around me was a solemn and grave blue. The trees and rocks breathed in and out, and swirls of fractal patterns and distortions edged at the periphery of my vision. I was still tripping and hard. I looked up and I found the grass around me bent outwards and flattened. I wondered for a moment if I'd been abducted by aliens, but I ended up laughing the thought off thing, and I found my bags hidden under a tree. I took out the Topaz crystal and I waited to come down, overwhelmed with awe at the power of what had happened the night before. I breathed in. Thank you, I whispered to the earth. I could almost hear it groan and reply. That was this morning, and I was still there, underneath the tree, still seeing everything around me breathe, still seeing fractals out of the corners of my eye, and my mind still racing like your mind does sometimes when you're at the peak of a trip. I had taken enough that I hardly expected that I'd feel totally normal the next day. But I didn't take enough that I should have been feeling these effects this far into the day. I'd wondered, for the last hour or so, what to do. I needed to come back to reality. Sometime just before nightfall, the idea hit me. Vitamin B. Niacin. I had a friend in Philadelphia. He used that to come down from a crazy acid trip a few years back. I'd passed by a Walmart when I was walking into town, too. I could walk there. I could buy some vitamins, and hopefully I could come down. Walking into Walmart felt like it took eons. Around me, cars dragged by, followed by brilliant tracers. Some of them looked like army cars, probably headed for the compound. A few folks glanced at me with suspicion, but mostly they paid me no mind. I could feel their thoughts. They were thinking, how sad, how disgusting. So sad to see heroin ruining this town. All of them coming at me in overwhelming waves. I could hear the gears of their engines in minute detail. The sound of teeth gnashing down against gum behind barely cracked windows. I could see color around the people. Most of the people were red, some gray, and some violet, and some blue. Halos of light behind their heads and souls quivering behind their eyelids. It was an hour of walking like this until I got to the supermarket. The flickering of the lights in the parking lot burnt my head. I knelt down against the ground and I held my hands over my eyes, at which point I was treated to a vivid swirl of aggravating yellows and blues.
I can't let my kids see this. I ought to call the police.
My eyes darted up at the source of the voice. Huh? I asked. A woman, putting her child into a car seat, looked back over her shoulder.
I didn't say anything.
The color behind her eyes said she wasn't lying. I stared into them for a moment, and I could tell she was a protector, almost an angel. I could feel pain behind her eyes, too. Her husband was gone away again, and she was afraid of sleeping in the house alone. I wanted to give her an agate for strength, but I knew she was afraid of me.
Disgusting.
I heard her mumble in her thoughts.
He's staring at me. So creepy.
I turned away quickly and raced away. I couldn't hear their thoughts, I told myself. I can't hear anyone's thoughts. Another family getting into their car all looked at me. Did he just say something? I looked back at them. Their lips weren't moving. A teenage boy inside of the car pictured himself in my shoes with horror. His little sister thought that I looked like someone from her history book. Their mother that was preoccupied with whatever she was planning on doing with the guacamole they bought at the store. While the father was fantasizing about killing me, but still in the back of his mind also thinking about the guacamole. It's not what you think. I walked quicker, trying not
start speaking. I can't hear their thoughts. I remind myself, quieter. I can't hear. An old lady exited the Walmart and started heading towards me. Her cart croaked and groaned. She seemed tired, exhausted even, deeply sad. I couldn't ignore her, even if what I imagined were her thoughts were probably delusions. I had to keep reminding myself. Can I help you? I asked as she opened the back door of her tiny red sedan. My own voice surprised me, sounding raspy and earthen. She looked at me with a faint smile, but a deep-seated fear. She was afraid, and she pictured me trying to mug her. I tried to seal off the delusions that I could somehow tell what she thought. With the bags, I can help you load up your car, I offered.
I don't have any more money,
she said, thinking that I was a beggar, maybe. I don't need any money. It's okay. Without another word, I lifted up the 2 heavier bags and set them in the back of her car for her.
Thank you, young man,
she said. Internally, I could hear her breathe a sigh of relief that I had not tried to hurt her.
I nodded and hurried into the Walmart. Grabbing a cart and struggling to right my course as I entered the store, I looked up towards the ceiling to try and read the signs. None of the letters made sense to me. All of them seemed jumbled and bizarre. As I entered, the manager immediately spotted me. I looked threatening. He was expecting me to steal something. In his mind, he imagined fighting me off with an assault rifle, and then engaging me in a knife fight. He thought if he could teach me a lesson, maybe Jill from customer service would finally see that he was a. I needed to stop. I couldn't tell what they were thinking. The colors I was seeing were from the acid. So were the voices, and so was everything. Trembling, I wandered towards what looked like a pharmacy. And I saw a row of green bottles that I presumed to be vitamins. None of the labels made sense to me. I couldn't read. Irritated, I threw up my hands, and I pondered trying to find a customer service person. Thought unnerved me. What was I thinking? I couldn't have a normal conversation right now. I couldn't handle that. No, I was stuck in the city. So many of those people in the parking lot. I thought about calling the police. If I got arrested, I didn't want to imagine what would happen. Hot here in Texas. I heard a woman's footsteps come by, and I could tell by her thoughts that she was an employee. And my delusional guessing was right. I can't read. I said, what line? My doctor said that I need vitamin B. Feeling very sorry for me, she headed into the aisle, scanning through the pill bottles with her index finger until she found what I was looking for. She handed it to me, grinning. She was the first genuinely kind person that I'd met. Her name was Meg. She wanted to be a doctor since her grandmother had cancer. Before that, though, she wanted to be a psychologist. And her older brother worked at a fast food place on the other side of town, along with two other jobs. And last summer, she'd taken 5 grams of mushrooms and experienced ego death while sitting waist deep in the... No. I tried to keep the delusions from coming to my head again. Niacin. you have any niacin? I asked. She nodded again, and she found a bottle. Thank you so much, I said.
Do you need anything else? Food? Water? Blankets?
She asked, realizing that I was having a bad trip. No, I'm fine. Yeah, I started to walk away. She thought about having more of a conversation with me.
Where is he from?
She thought. I wanted to put my delusion to rest. I'm from California, I said. She froze.
I was going to ask.
I think I can read your mind, I admitted. What kind of doctor do you want to be? You want to be a neurologist? She was afraid now, but impressed that I was correct. Let me give you something, I said. I slung around my pack and I took out a pencil case full of crystals on a string. At that point, the manager was alerted to my presence. I knew since apparently I could read minds now that I'd taken acid. I fished one of them out. This is a tourmaline, I said. She looked at it, visibly uncomfortable. It will give you bravery, I muttered, concentration, balance, and confidence. The manager swung around the corner.
Is this guy bothering you, Megan?
No, I was just helping him find some vitamins.
She also thought I was psychic now, and she was staring at the crystal with awe.
What are those? Where'd you get those?
I froze, wary of his every thought. They're mine. They're mine. I make them. I make them for people at concerts and stuff. Okay? I started shaking.
Oh yeah? Look pretty nice. How much do those fetch for?
I don't charge any money because they're healing crystals. Raising his eyebrows, the manager scoffed and started to reach for the box. The two of us locked eyes, and he froze. I felt my consciousness stretch until it met with his. The two of them brushed up against each other until the walls of them burst away, and I was inside of his consciousness, aware of every movement of his mind and every feeling inside of his body. He tried to jerk away. I held him still. Well, I held him still. I couldn't believe what was happening. I started to panic, to bring my consciousness back into my body. But instead, it tore him away with me, ripping his psyche from his native mind. And I could see it peel out of his skull, it oozing like a thick red water, inside of which was a small person shaped exactly like him. He was trapped in there. Only he and I were aware of what was transpiring. He came closer and closer until he was sucked into my forehead, and I could see him. The two of us were locked in a higher plane of existence that I felt come detached from the other pieces of my being. a long tunnel inside of my mind covered in mirrors and bright blue lights where he saw me running away from him, all the while with the image of my physical face staring down at him from high above. He was being dragged along by a powerful force, screaming and pleading for mercy. He looked back, and he could see his physical body, its expression vacant and pale. Flailing, he tried to dig his fingers into the sides of the tunnel. Meanwhile, I was unable to think of what to do. I was terrified myself. I'd never had another person's consciousness inside of my head before. The sensation of it was bizarre. I felt the region of my brain where I had him trapped light up on my physical body. But another part of my mind was aware of this psychic plane to which I had transported him, and I now stood in front of him. He was now both a part of me and apart from me. Hoping to at least make his stay inside of my head productive, I tried to speak to him. Please don't take my crystals.
Let me out! Let me out! Please! Please let me out!
I swear I didn't steal these, I said. I tried to make him cognizant of what I had been through to collect them, sharing my memories. The force which had been pulling him deeper into my mind began to dissipate, and panting, he collapsed to the ground. I watched him for a little bit, wondering if he understood what I was trying to say. Wondering as well if, outside of my still tripping mind, I was being attacked. I guess this couldn't be real. I tried to come to him gently and help him up. He swung his arm and he tried to punch me. It hurt at first. Just until I realized it was my mind, and it was my decision if his punches could hurt me. He continued hurling his punches at my face and my chest, but I was unmoved. I'd only taken acid 5 times before, and I'd learned a little about consciousness and the nature of pain and suffering and death and the nature of love and hope and peace and the harmony at work in the world, and I knew, if nothing else, that as angry as this man was, that there was compassion that I needed to feel for him, since deep down I understood that I could have been in his same place and walked in his same shoes, and if only circumstances had been slightly different. The anger and the hate that this man carried in his heart radiated and lashed out at those around him, pelting them with negative energy, but also withering away his own soul. The two of us were conscious of each other as one.
Stop doing that.
He whispered. Please don't take my crystals. He punched me another time and turned to run frantically. I chased after him. Wait! I shouted. He only ran faster. I began to gain speed on him, grabbing onto his leg just as he tried to leap out of my eyes. Shockingly, I was now adrift between our two bodies. The field of unity, which I perceived between us, stretched as we flew closer and closer to his face. I could see his iris, swirling in a fantastic array of colors and lights, growing larger and larger until I was swallowed up by the pupil. I was adrift now, in a swirling and smoldering war zone, which had been bent around the rim of a pipe. A spiral of skull and bones figures rose up into my face as I held on to his legs. He was panicking. I felt his stomach sink, an overwhelming psychedelic nausea filling his guts. I released him and held up my hand. The visuals of anger and hatred I could feel within him were ones that I had felt haunting me once before. With focus and concentration, I began to replace them with fields of flowers, sunshine, and landscapes that I drew from places in his childhood. As I did, I watched him run from me, and I let him do so. The further into his own mind he got, the more I struggled to fill him with light, pulling it out from wherever I could find it, until he finally locked himself away. Feeling the energy of peace that I had spread through his mind surge around me, I began to speak. Don't listen to what those people on the internet tell you, okay? Someone like Jill doesn't need you to see you pretend to be strong and powerful. Maybe you can show her pictures of your dog or something instead of your guns.
Get out of my head!
He fumed. The flowers were torn away as a river of blood ripped through them. A vortex of rage, colored like smoldering embers, erupting from underneath me, trying to suck me in. I pulled myself out of it and surrounded myself in light. But the sudden assault had thrown me off balance and left me vulnerable to attack inside what I knew was an enemy mine. The manager appeared beneath me and dragged me under. As I fell, I could see my face, my pupils dilated, and my physical body entirely catatonic. My eyes started to suck me back towards my own mind, but I did not follow them. At first, I began to choke underneath the water, punched me, knocking the teeth from my skull and sending me reeling as the two of us sunk deeper and deeper into his psyche. A raging and violent music pulsated around us. I ignored him, breathing deeply and then searching for my center. This was all in his head. All in my head as well. If I returned his assaults with compassion, nothing he could do would hurt me. Eventually, his anger started to fall on deaf ears. A light again began to surround me, and I choked out the sounds of music. Suddenly, he was drowning on the water he had pulled me into. And once again, his punches did nothing. I rose up and shot back into my body. The field of oneness which had encircled us receded, and my consciousness reunited with the rest of my mind. The manager, with tears streaming down his face, stared back at me in anger, trying to move his lips. His body was paralyzed, even as his mind began to regain control. Megan had been watching us with horror, as had several of the other employees and a group of customers. The employees were hoping, almost all of them, that I'd punched the manager in the face. Megan was happy that the manager had made himself look like an ass, and almost felt herself tripping in my presence. A single father with 4 children shook his head, thinking that I provoked something. 2 older women on their way to a Bible study wondered if I was demon-possessed, and if I was, they were going to pray for me. Maybe. A teenager who'd come there to buy DXM was hoping that we'd fight. I quickly jammed a box of crystals into the backpack, and I ran out of the store as quickly as I could. Frantic and mortified at what I'd just done, I didn't stop running until I got to the road, at which point I knelt down and then clutched my head and stifled a scream. Had it really happened? Was this just acid? It shouldn't have just been the acid. But if it wasn't the acid, then it had really happened. I rocked back and forth. I was hyperventilating. I looked insane. I knew I did because at least 4 or 5 people stopped at the stoplight, and they all thought so. I need to relax. I knew I did because at least I knew I hadn't eaten for almost a day. Yeah, maybe if I got some food in my stomach, I thought I could go back to normal. Maybe if I drank some water. I'd been sweating a lot. I thought that must be what it was. I ran towards the gas station. I jaywalked through traffic, and I stumbled onto the curb. 4 or 5 people honked at me. Felt like I could vomit. I set my pack near the door of the gas station out of courtesy, and I quickly walked. I quickly ran to go get a bottle of water. Freaking hell! I tore 2 or 3 or 4 from the shelf. The front desk worker, who had immigrated from Pakistan 3 years ago, had already called the police twice that day, and in retaliation for the store's owner paying him less than minimum wage, had decided he wouldn't stop shoplifters anymore. He had a master's degree in chemistry, and he told his parents he would help them come to the United States once he found a better job. I grabbed a bag of chips, and I headed to the counter, slamming my bounty down and avoiding eye contact. I pointed toward the rack of hot food, my fingers shaking. Can I get a bunch of those too? Taquitos? Sure. How many? Yeah. He had guessed that I wanted 4, and I meant to say that he was right, but I'd gotten ahead of myself. Rolling his eyes, he decided to give me 5 since they were going to expire in half an hour, and he didn't care if the owner lost money at that point. The owner had taken advantage of the workers as long as they'd worked there. No matter what his parents said, I need to stop reading people's minds. It was none of my business. None of my business. I dug through my pocket for money. Oh, don't worry, man. I got you. He opened the register and quickly slammed it shut. Giving charity to the less fortunate was part of his religious duty. So, he fantasized for a moment about giving me all the money in the cash register. He recoiled in shame at the impulse. Thank you. I sat down outside of the store and I guzzled down a bottle of water as quickly as I could, breathing. Visuals began to subside, but in my mind, I still felt like I was dripping. I still felt a chorus of thoughts all around me. My heart was pounding. It was filled with anxiety. I was alone in a strange city, awash with psychic powers. I scarfed down the taquitos just as quickly as I could. Oh my God. I didn't feel hungry, but my mind knew that I should be. So the food felt strange. It was richly vivid and alien as it slid down my throat and into my stomach. I could feel the tingle of serotonin in my gut as the food began to slink into my belly. Rather than dissipate, my senses began to amplify. I could feel in vivid detail the texture of the pavement, the energy in the power lines coursing through the air, the smells of the town, a strange mix of cow manure and petroleum, so Texas. The perfumes and colognes and sweat dripping off people in the heat, the latent humidity in the air. All of it filled my nose with palpable thickness. That was when a hulking black pickup truck, one which reeked of energy drinks, geraniums, and chewing tobacco, with the sounds of a gunfighting podcast playing at a low volume from the cracked window, it inched into the parking lot. An ominous wave of darkness came over me and dominated the air. The spirit of the surroundings turned gray. I felt something coming. A wave of psychic pain and terror. That car had driven all the way from Wichita. I searched through it. There were two minds. Arthur Calloway. His brain tense and hyper-aware after a police officer had followed them with its sirens on. He pulled over and the officer drove on, heading somewhere else. In the back seat, there was a boy. His name was Zachary Mendez. He'd been kidnapped. I started shaking, watching Arthur, an old, husky man who had been dishonorably discharged from the military in 1970, emerge from the truck and come towards me. His thoughts, as I peered into them, seemed immeasurably dark and callous. $200,000. That was the price of this job. I stood up, trembling. If this was real, I needed to do something. Calloway entered the gas station ponderously. The employee at the front counter, who I should clarify as an Indominate, looked at him with an ounce of boredom. Calloway didn't like Ahmed. He didn't like having to deal with these sand knickers. He wondered if it was some kind of Arab who bought the kid he was transporting with a touch of humor. I stood up, and then I entered the gas station, coughing. Calloway looked at me with disgust, trying to figure out if I was a junkie. I bumped into him. Oh, I'm sorry. Ahmed grimaced as Calloway stepped back. Watch where you're going! He barked. I looked into his eyes. An aura of black surrounded his skull. A piercing gray dominated the area around his iris. He froze in a rigid stasis, and I felt my consciousness wash over his arm. I searched through his memory, learning what he did. And as I did so, a creeping sense of dread came over him as the memory surged from whatever part of his brain they'd been locked in. He tried to pull away, but it was no use. Those taquitos were very filling, and now I felt myself easily 10 times stronger than I had felt before. I ripped Calloway's soul from his body. It shot from his eyes into mine, being drawn deeper and deeper into my mind, thinking of what he had done to the kids, to the women, to his own family. My soul began to whelp with intense anger. Outside, I watched his face melt with terror. My own mind began to burn with an intensity I had only felt in my own nightmares. Calloway shot from an icy black tunnel into a swirling mass of cataclysmic energy, being drawn deeper and deeper into my rage. He screamed in terror, crying for mercy. I held him there, overwhelmed myself by anger. I tore the skin from his mind, and I began to tear at him until his soul was reduced to a skeleton. I threw the memory of what he'd done back at him, and I replayed them thousands of times over. I pulled old wounds back to life, and I magnified them. I threw his consciousness into pieces until there was almost nothing. Tears streamed down his physical body's face as blood gushed from his nose and out the corner of his mouth. Had I killed him? A sense of guilt overcame me. I was the killer. I was a killer. I stopped pulling Calloway, and his soul, now only a few sun-bleached bones, shivered. Please, stop. I could have been him. I realized. Only a few steps in my life different. A few missed chances to learn, and I would have been him. There were lessons that we learn over and over. One of which is how destructive it is to hate. And I was reminded of it there. I had been caught in an impulsive cycle of rage. And I had held on to it. Now, here I held the broken soul of a person. One which I could have healed. And I'd chosen to let it wither. To let the opportunity wither. The two of us both began to cry. I showed him where I came from. Sacramento. I was a healer, I said. I left my life as a geologist to sell healing crystals at music festivals. I showed him the life that I might have had. And I told him I found that money didn't mean as much as your sense of inner peace. And all this time I tried to show him he had, and we both had, for a little bit, suppress a heart full of chaos so that we could make money and survive. As I did this, his mind started racing and reaching its own conclusions, filtering through what I'd said. He needed to turn himself in, he kept repeating. He needed to go to prison. You need to get help, I said. You need to get better. I need to get better. You need to. Yeah. I shot him back into his body. A dead-eyed stare overtook what once remained. Ahmed was praying, afraid, understandably, that something terribly dark had happened. I could see his words. They were drifting upwards through 1,000 tiny frames into some kind of ultimate. A huge and infinite light. An infinite, ever-dividing and multiplying nothingness. White as snow. Dead as bones and yet pulsing with life. I cowered underneath it. I didn't know what I was doing. And I'd nearly killed a man out of my own rage. But the ultimate was not indifferent, but at peace. At peace with us. Loving in a way where it knew all of our faults, but believed in our eventual redemption. Calloway, still sharing his consciousness with me, stared upwards at it, trembling as he regained control of his own mind. The colors around his skull flashed white and blue with trails of purple. Where am I? He wondered. Texas, I said. Fuck. I hate Texas. He shivered. Well, you'll be tried in Kansas, at least. He trembled. Hey, don't be afraid, I told him. Don't worry, just plead guilty. Find a way to find peace with what you've done, without destroying yourself. He stared up at the light. What is that? He asked. I don't know. He stared at me incredulously. I feel like I've seen it before, but I really don't know what it is. I withdrew from the man's mind receding. He patted his legs and searched for his phone. Ahmed watched us both with confusion. Either we were both on something, or this was just some kind of American thing that he didn't understand. Arthur Calloway dialed 911. As someone picked up, he said, Hello. My name is Arthur Calloway. I need you to come and arrest me. I kidnapped a child. I was driving to Houston to sell him to a client. I can't do this anymore, he said. Gulping, the man hung up, and he ran to his truck, opening the door to reveal a child fast asleep in a car seat, under the influence of sleeping pills. He carried the child out to the curb, and he sat there, motionless, waiting for the police. His mind was blank, save a single phrase that he kept repeating. I need to get better. I looked over at Ahmed. He sighed. You know, the police have already been here twice today. Yeah, I said. I guess I did know that. Solemnly, I bit into the last of my taquito, watching Calloway and the kid sit in complete silence and wait for the police.
Hello, folks. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Rivers of the Mind entitled Blue Topaz. Next week, you're going to hear an episode entitled The Dragon from the Beyond. This episode was written, directed, produced, and scored by me, with the exception of 2 songs, Resurrection of the Lifeway by De Morgan Damerung Dace Valhalla and Lee Rosevere's song Vaping in LA. Voices for the episode beyond my voice were provided by Michelle Pearl, who played the 2 women in the parking lot, Cameron Mayfield, who played the manager at the Walmart, and then Kyla Valenti, who played the part of Megan. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe and tell your friends if you like Rivers of the Mind. Special thanks also to Joshua Aldrich, my arch nemesis, who actually recorded the first draft of this and did a score for it. His input into the series and his input into the composing process was super, super, super useful. I can't thank him enough. Please be sure to tune in next week at this same time for the next episode of Rivers of the Mind.